Thank you so much, and wishing everyone a very warm welcome to this third day of the of this very interesting event and summit, wherein I'm sure you got many insights. And today is the opportunity to talk more about cybersecurity. I'm here today to share with you some of our thought processes, some of our learnings and observations, and thereby reflections on how it can be applied in the areas of cybersecurity management by looking at innovations around SOC, around Security Operations Center. So let me move ahead. So if you look at, again, the boardroom view matters, right? And we have spoken about this earlier as well, that security has become a boardroom issue now. But more importantly, now as one looks at enterprise risk and one looks at, safely navigating these uncertain times and moving ahead, stepping ahead with confidence, cyber risk management is indeed a very important issue and truly a boardroom issue in that sense. And one of the best ways to evidence that is to look at what Mr. John Chambers has to say about this. And he has been quite active as an investor also in the cybersecurity industry segment with a few organizations and startups that he's supporting. And clearly, the view is this: that what the board believes is that it's the state of existence can only be that you have been hacked, you have been breached, and you are doing something about it, or you have been hacked and you don't know about it, and therefore doing nothing about it. So our discussion here going forward would be more about with both these states, the call for action is the most important part, and how an organization, how an IT leader and a security leader can enable that is what I would like to discuss with you further. Now, just in terms of giving you a frame of reference, because all of us do have a frame of reference and some view around the SOC, right? So how do we look at it and how would I like to share it with you? No major surprises here, but it's just the way, it gets constructed. For many people, SOC is or has been equivalent, to SIEM. I would beg to differ. SOC is related to a lot of managed services around managing different types of security tools. Again, I would say that there's a nuance there, and I would beg to differ. So, what I would like to present to you is SOC is really the integrated platform-based thinking, the linchpin, that critical program of your organization in the digital era, which anchors the ability to manage threats through this life cycle of when the initial signaling starts and something starts showing up on the horizon, and there's a possibility to detect it all the way down through to response, remediation, and even recovery or resolution. So it is something which ties these very crucial stages of how one manages this kind of external attack, which is, as I mentioned earlier, is a clear boardroom concern also. So if we go deeper into this threat management life cycle and these critical performance areas, what we see is that detection is a very big component of it. There have been many questions which have been raised that erstwhile tools are kind of failing in their ability to be able to step up to detect the advanced threats, the unknown threats, the zero-day attacks, etc. So detection, therefore, is now being seen as more a composition of capability, and it is something which ties in, more contextual knowledge, which you see at the bottom over here, like compliance management or industry-specific nuances of specific mandates, regulations, and standards that you need to adhere to, or the context of the IT landscape that your enterprise has. Is it a multi-cloud environment? What is the spread of the environment, right? And from that contextual understanding, the detection capability then starts deriving more leverage out of enrichment through CTI, through getting better understanding and intelligence from the understanding of the threat landscape on a real-time basis through the right feeds and the right analysis around that, through getting into more of a behavior-oriented approach, and moving away from a signature-based or a rule-based approach. This is something that we are clearly seeing more and more because the rules can fade, but the behavior typically tends to trigger the minute we are able to, assess the anomaly, even for low and slow attacks. And all of that then fusing together again back into a big data lake where more and getting access to more and more data, which can give ability to analyze and enhance the analytics activities that can go on. So starting from the context to better capabilities and to all fusing it together is something where the known issues of how do I detect I'm not able to detect, or why did I fail to detect, is we see some of the answers lying there. And then comes the key aspect of response. And this is one of the critical KPIs in a SOC. And we hear this all the time when we talk to customers. What is the response commitment you can give? Now, the fact is, we do understand and know that responses does have dependencies. But can we at least clearly understand what the processes, sub-processes within response are, which we can see here as investigate and respond in terms of being able to better understand and profile the event, the incident, and then going through the triage, etc. And as these two key processes, sub-processes play into the response and remediation part of it, it is the automation and orchestration which can now give, really enhance the ability, really enhance the speed and the capability of security analysts in terms of how they can work on this in the SOC. So with these kind of core capabilities is what I wanted to kind of put a frame of reference of why is SOC the linchpin for threat management. Also sharing just a quick, chronological view on the timelines of how the SOC has evolved. And, what this really means is the fact is SOC is now getting more and more embedded into very broadly into across the entire environment in terms of how it can help manage threats across the entire environment. From the fairly rudimentary stuff around either managing the endpoint security or just the perimeter part of it to, and supporting monitor compliance, which became a big goal for, let's say, in the third generation of the SOC, and then moving on further towards, the advanced threats started bothering enterprises. They started impacting. So how does one really look at that? Aligning to models like the cyber kill chain, which came up, which gave some method to that and some kind of a science-based approach towards, how do you go through the stages of managing and exterminating such threats. And of course, up through CTI into some of the current capabilities that we're talking about to support from the known attacks, as we can see here at the bottom, right, towards much more the challenges, the scale up needed is the innovation needed is towards the unknown. So that's kind of what we are looking at over here. So with that thought process, kind of if we were to examine and evaluate what does the future hold for. So here I would like to share some certain ideas for you, which could be the drivers, for the enterprise SOC that your organization needs. So expanding attack surface, this is a fact which is evident to everybody, and it's not lost on any of us that the attack surface is indeed expanding and expanding fairly rapidly. And the endpoint as an attack surface became a very visible, area of attack and breach. In of course, in the times of the remote working, and in the times of the distributed enterprise, scattered enterprise of the pandemic, and the fact that cybercrime continues to rise, and there's a lot to be gained by the such activities, whether it is through a ransom-based approach, whether it is through a data breach and sale of data approach, whether it is through fraudulent transactions. The different types of dimensions of how cybercrime is now playing out is continuing to increase. Of course, the talent challenge is and continues to be, the talent gap is like, really one of the most acute and biggest challenging areas of cybersecurity. And the fact that, the nature of alerts also, one can't standardize and, just bucket it appropriately. It is something which is quite flexible. And therefore, it requires one almost like a 360-degree vision around this thing to be able to understand this. Compliance, again, there's a clear step up that we are seeing in terms of what the regulators are doing, and because they are also watching the environment and they want to ensure a certain baseline which all the organizations in that given segment are adhering to. So compliance in, of course, in the banking and financial services areas, extending to many other areas, whether it be healthcare, whether it be telecom, whether it be critical infrastructure, is clearly driving the need to step up security operations, better security operations, and better SOC execution. And then, of course, the increasing, the gap, which is, as I had mentioned earlier, is one of the biggest expectations of performance KPIs of the SOC. That how can you reduce the exposure window for the enterprise, and how can the response, be effective, and in certain cases, how can a gap and a chink in the security armor in the security posture be seen upfront, so that some proactive response can also start, rather than the incident becoming a full blown incident and then the response activities start. So against these areas, what could be some of the ways in which are so here are some of the suggestions that I would like to talk to you about. Again, these are therefore certain design approaches and principles that we would like to mention as ideas for you to look at advancement of your SOC, transformation of your SOC. One is capability to account for new environments and how to expand the coverage of what currently the SOC is watching. In many cases, what we found was the SOC was watching primarily the servers, some of the core data center components, and the perimeter. That's what mostly it seemed to be watching, but the fact is now it needs to watch much more. We just spoke about the fact that the distributed enterprise means that every endpoint has become the perimeter, and the cloud deployment means that many of your critical workloads are in the cloud, so just can't be watching some of the erstwhile standard components. Capability to ingest, as I said earlier, in terms of this is where one can fuse data which brings and enhances the capability of the enterprise to run analytics, look at more behavior-based issues, and make determinations around unknown attacks through that. That can come through this capability to ingest large volumes of data. So does your SOC really have that? Is the thinking around security big data lake really coming up? What are the different sources that feed into it? What are the signaling? What is the signaling coming out of it? Reworked skill model. Reworked skill model, of course, means that just thinking about the standard L1, L2, L3 pyramid probably doesn't work, which means that there are thought processes around how can one reduce and eliminate a fair bit of the L1 layer itself and make the L1 and L1 1.5 and L2 through appropriate tools and supporting them to be able to do that, using more of threat hunting based approach, so that it's not about just putting your people to work on respective tools, but getting into much more of hunting and initial proactive capabilities around that. From there, looking at especially around capabilities around intelligent tooling. So this is very, very important, because decision making many times going from triage to determination, and especially when if it is thrown at an IT leader or a business leader, that here is the security potential security issue, what is the decision to be taken, it makes life quite difficult. So therefore, the right tooling to be able to enable some of the decisions faster is something very important, which can go into the kind of playbooks that exist. Better technology to human interaction. Again, how to interpret data, how to get engage your other not just security team members, but other team members, IT infrastructure, cloud developers, etc. also is very important. So how to create the right kind of portals, the right interfaces, so that there is the consumption of the security function, which can be much more easier, especially let's say in the cloud enabled world. And of course the threat intelligence. It's always be more context aware, always understand kind of what could be some of the drivers, what has changed in the environment, why are we seeing certain patterns, is something which is extremely important. And today, while we see the threat intel is generally being used, but because the sources are so varied and one does get threat intel through many of the tools that you will buy, what really curated threat intelligence means and implies is something that really needs to be looked at, because it is going beyond what really comes as packaged or bundled with any tool. It's not about that. It's going beyond that into tying it much better to your context, coming up with a nuance execution plan, which flows out from there, etc., is very, very important. So how does one, looking at these drivers for innovation and then looking at some potential strategies, how does one look at it? So the way we look at it is, of course, what I would like to really, talk to you more about over here. How can we solve this challenge and how are we solving this challenge? Is through a layered approach where these capabilities need to kind of get stacked on top of each other, and all of that fulfill and fuel the need of a mature cybersecurity, cyber threat management through SOC and through managed security services. So it's a combination of technology and services which get incorporated into a platform. So what do we really mean by that? So starting from the left, it has to be about, we talked about the people and the skill challenge, and we was also talking about assisting and making the enhancing the ability of the SOC engineer in terms of what they are doing. And that can happen through industry best practices, like say the MITRE attack model. I mentioned the cyber kill chain, which was there earlier, but today some of the advanced models that are coming in, or looking at the cloud security plan stipulations for how to manage security on the cloud, especially the public cloud environment, etc. So taking some of those industry best practices, interweaving them into the managed services approach, the processes that exist over there, and enabling the teams on that, and enhancing their skills, their capabilities, and certifications is a very important part of this layer. And that's kind of one important aspect of solving those challenges that I mentioned. The second one is cloud delivered integrated platform. So this cloud does give us the flexibility as well as the scalability that we would need, where some of the erstwhile security solutions had that challenge. So how to look at that to cater towards fusing all that big data that we spoke about, and then using that integrated platform to derive better analytics from it, whether it be user behavior, whether it be network threat analytics, and all of that. And then within the same platform, extend it further towards automation and reporting capabilities. So today these can coexist and get seamlessly interface within the cloud-based approach, where the security big data is there, and the way ML machine learning gets embraced to keep carrying out more analytics. Of course, there are tools also available which can render specific analytics in the market. But tying that then to what are the top playbooks, right? And how can we keep improving in terms of these automated playbooks? And then enhancing the interface, human machine interface that I talked about through better reporting, enrichment of the portal, enrichment of the user self-care that can be provided. And supporting that is, of course, there's a rapid change and improvement happening also in terms of the kind of solutions that are there. Unification, for example, happening for some of the solutions. Example being, let's say, cloud workload protection. I'm fairly excited about that solution because that is something that helps encompass security into one unified solution, which takes care of the host, the endpoint itself, which takes care of what is happening in the memory, which typically was not being catered by the standard AV solutions, and also at the application layer. So these have been typically separate solutions, and all of this can today get encompassed into more of a unified solution. And then, being able to further expand it to look at the landscape that it needs to protect, which is, of course, as I said, not just the different layers of from endpoints up to application, but also the expanded footprint across cloud, remote offices, remote users, branch offices, etc. So this is kind of how we start encompassing it into the core capabilities. And this is, what we believe is through a cloud SOC approach, we can really assist organizations, help you meet your goals. And underlying these are many more details. But just to capture this back into, how is it getting rendered? What are we really doing about it? You could ask us that question. Okay, so what have you achieved in this? What I would like to quickly highlight is that on the innovation side, I talked about the MITRE attack model on the top, the threat feeds and contextualized threat feeds, how it comes into this thing from paid and public. More importantly, malware analysis and research is very important to be able to enable a threat hunting approach. So that's something that we look at, and we have an automation platform that which renders as a service, which renders some of these automated playbooks, etc. And of course, giving full business continuity through SOC centers that are fully compliant to that, giving a much better interface and intuitive interface to a single pane of glass portal is what we provide to our customers. An expert team of security and certifications that we have achieved for both for our operation centers as well as for our people and skills is very important. And then all of this tied into best practices based models. like MITRE attack, and of course, which certain empaneled shows that we are also very much aligned with India's advancing cybersecurity landscape, and with some of the right testimonials and endorsements from the analysts and market experts, that's what we are looking at. So that's what we really wanted to share with you in terms of our perspective and the value that we believe we would want to bring to organizations in terms of the cyber risk management approach. And with that, let me end this session and wish you a very good rest of the session. And hopefully, looking forward to inquiries coming through and us being able to talk and engage with you more. Thank you.